12:51 a.m.
Yes, this is Raw 12:51 a.m. We're live back for the first time this term with the Warwick F1 Show, and it's kind of the second season of the Warwick F1 Show. We've seen what was an incredible year of F1 throughout. I think it's probably the best year we've seen in the hybrid era, right? Yeah, I'm getting nods. I'll introduce, of course, the people I'm with in a second, but we're now moving on. We've done our season review, and we've got to look at a little bit of preview, a little bit of review, but just whatever topics you like. So today we're going over the career of Kimi Raikkonen, of course, a legend of the sport. He joined in 2001, so he spent, I guess, technically spent 19 years in the sport with that 2-year gap, but he's been a part of F1 for so long, it's going to be weird without him. What else would be weird is if I didn't come with any guests. So, of course, you've got my regular co-host and an encyclopedia of F1, Will Kingswood.
Yeah, I'm back. It's weird. He's been in.
Not his mic up.
Oh, there we go. Yep, I'm back. It's weird. He'd been in F1 for longer than I've been alive. I mean, I'm not sure when your birthday is, but maybe you as well.
No, I'm just about on the right side.
You're on the right side of Kimi Raikkonen. Yeah, but it's good to be back. Good to have season 2, and we'll just keep ticking it over until obviously Bahrain, which is surprisingly not that long away. Only in mid-March, isn't it?
Yeah, it's what's that? 9 weeks now. I think so.
I'm not sure I like that. No break.
Yeah, and we've also got a big fan of Kimi Raikkonen, which is fortunate because I'm going to have to rely on him a lot. But I don't think it's fair to call you a guest anymore. You're kind of a co-host as well. We're going to call you that at least for season 2. We've got Chinmay back in as well. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, Kimi Raikkonen, he's just an enigma of F1. He's just one of the most popular people that's ever been seen on the paddock. You can't deny how great of a person he was, whether you see him as that sort of person who just didn't care about anything, it was just a hobby for him, or the fact that he was a great driver, especially in the early 2000s. But yeah, it's what a career he's had, and I just massively respect him for that.
Yeah, and we're gonna spend the term absolutely ramming our studio with as many people as we can find. So we've got, oh my good, you got a page of notes. You're so ready. We've got Saif Durrani as well for first time here. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling great, Jack. Thanks for having me on. It's a great opportunity to speak about the coldest man on the track, the Iceman, Kimi Raikkonen.
I mean, you're clearly prepared for it. This is great.
Kimi's life is too far to comprehend in one mind. I have to have it on paper.
You're putting me to shame here. I've got one tiny page of notes, and we've got to fit our 5th person in as well. We've got a newish F1 fan, but also a first time in the studio for James Rowe as well. How are you doing?
Yeah, hi there. Thank you. Jack, again, thank you for having me on the show as well. I'm not quite prepared as Safe in terms of notes, but I'm looking forward to taking away whatever I can in terms of Kimi Raikkonen's career. Ready to learn, and yeah.
I mean, it's a shame we've only got an hour, isn't it? We could talk about this man for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. You could break down just the 2007 season and do that for 1 hour, right? Or 2008 or 2005 or anything. But we're going to start right back at the start. And it's worth talking about it in a little bit more detail than maybe the time allows, because it's at Sauber. Kimi Raikkonen gets his break at Sauber, and it's all because of Peter Sauber. And that's where he goes to at the end of his career. But it's a big break for him, right? First thing, 2001, he's in there. Nobody's heard of him. He's done 23 car races ever. The FIA aren't sure whether to give him a license. And he comes in alongside, someone. Who was he along? Was it?
I think it was Nick Heidfeld.
Was it Nick Heidfeld? I think he does an okay first season. I've had a look at the Wikipedia. He scored 9 points. So he scored points in his first race. Remember, that's the old point system before we changed in 2012. But that's probably the equivalent of a handful of top 6s. Little do you know, by 2 years' time, he's competing for the title. So, I mean, of course, we've said it already. This is a position where he's been before some of us are even born. But where do you see, if that was the only season you had, Kimi going? Start with you, Will. Roughly.
I mean, wait, so what, just off the Sauber season?
If you only knew Kimi, 2001, in Sauber, alongside Nick Heidfeld, where would you see his career going?
I mean, you've got to remember, people come into the sport. Rookies very rarely come into the sport and do exceptionally well. Like Lewis Hamilton is the exception rather than the norm in terms of how rookies come into sport, and we've seen it this season. The three rookies have all sort of struggled a bit. So, I mean, he'd had 23 races. We look at how Max Verstappen, everyone called him inexperienced. Kimi had 23 races. That's one F1 season before he gets chucked into the pinnacle of motorsport. So I mean, scoring as well as he did, probably you'd think he was up and coming. Maybe how quickly he then rose into McLaren as well, because obviously they're a top team. It's very sort of Max Verstappen-esque, but it's almost like Max Verstappen extreme in a way.
And I think in some ways those two are 15 years apart, but could you see them having the same kind of career, that same 21-year span? I mean, are they the same media style as well? They're both a little bit, not derogatory, that's not the right word, but a little bit more casual relationship to the media. Can you see Max being the same as Kimi, or is there some difference I'm missing, Chinmay?
Probably a little bit of a difference. I mean, in terms of the general gist, I would say there will be a lot of similarity, especially with the relations with the media, but I think, because Kimi Raikkonen's personality is quite a bit different from Max Verstappen, so probably that's where you probably see a little bit of a difference. But, yeah, I mean, there's not... Yeah, I think that's about it.
That was one way of ending that sentence. Yeah, I mean, I do think there's some difference, but it's interesting to see how early he came in, right? He was in his 20s, he's not quite the 16, but it's just out of nowhere. I think a little bit of credit needs to be thrown to Mika Hakkinen as well, because he was the one that got him that seat at McLaren in 2002. But before we move on to speak about that, I want to do the complete opposite of what I should be doing. I want to jump forward to 2019. He comes back to Alfa Romeo, Sauber in disguise. How would you have rather seen Kimi retiring in 2018 after he's left Ferrari, his second stint there, or what do you reckon, Saif?
Well, I mean, from what Kimi said previously when he did sign that extension contract with Ferrari during his second stint, he said that he wanted to retire at Ferrari. But then I think it was good that he did move to Sauber and he went back home. And I think he had a great time there from what I can tell, because Kimi, if he wants to leave the sport, he would have left it. You know, he's one of those guys.
What about you, James? Kind of the same question. Do you think it would be better for someone else to come in? I mean, we're seeing Guan Yu Zhou stepping into the seat, or maybe you could argue it's Bottas coming in that fin to replace him. But is he... It's a bit of a question for debate. He's there to have fun, right? He's been very clear about that. But is that an issue? Is that an issue for the sport? Or is he earned his right to be there?
Well, I mean, obviously, from what I've heard and what I've read so far about him, there's no doubt that he deserves a seat. But if you're asking me, someone who's watched F1 from maybe late in 2019, I'd definitely say he should have stayed, because I wanted to see him race, obviously. So him not retiring at 2018 meant that I could see him race for another 1.5 season, 2 seasons for me. So and I think it's a bit. It might be a bit harsh for the up-and-coming rookies, but I definitely enjoyed seeing Kimi Raikkonen racing.
And from what I remember, he finished third in his last season with Ferrari, right? Which
Yeah.
Which, he was still red hot by the time he was leaving Ferrari, and the Ferrari car at that time wasn't that competitive at all. So, I mean, that's kudos to him. He was still a really good driver.
Yeah, we're going to talk about... We're going to have to go so quick, because there's so much to talk about, but we'll throw it back to the early 2000s, and after that great... great season's a bit of an exaggeration, but after that decent season at Sauber, he takes Mika Hakkinen's seat at McLaren, 2002 to 2000... Was he... Until 2007?
Oh, yeah, 2007, because he moved
was his last season?
2006, he moved to Ferrari.
Oh, yeah, my bad, yeah. So, throughout that time... Will, is that his best time in F1? Is that his best 5 years there?
Yes, I mean, probably, but he almost suffered from it sort of being the wrong time. I think, especially with 23 races before and 1 season, going into that top team was probably a bit early, and then you had sort of some of his mistakes were coupled with McLaren's cars during that period being very happy to just blow up every 5 minutes. I think probably it was too early in his career, maybe staying at Sauber for 03 or maybe 02, 03, 04. I think if he goes around later, he has a much higher chance of winning that 05 championship. Obviously, losing it to Fernando Alonso, I think probably his journey into a top team was a bit early. I mean, even like it's very parallel to Max Verstappen, and you see that with Verstappen as well. Like he struggled sort of a bit early on. Like we think 2018, he was having crashes at almost all the races at the start of the season. Like, I just think it sort of came at the wrong place at the wrong time, almost that free McLaren seat. If it had come a few years later, it might have been even better for him.
Okay, and we talked about, you said 2005 is a season we're going to mention over and over and over again because it's so big for him. But there's another season before that as well, 2003. He loses the title to Michael Schumacher by 2 points in it. That's all it is, and they're on different tyre sets. The tyres are a mess at that point. Ferrari have won 5 years in a row. It's absolute chaos. 2003, is that where you see, wow, this is a future world champion, and that's something that gets thrown around. But is that where he stepped up big time, or is it just a bit coincidence?
No, I would say that's definitely when he stepped up big time. I mean, don't forget, yes, Michael Schumacher would have had a slightly less competitive car because 2003 was kind of one of the slightly more slippery years in that sort of Ferrari domination era. But then the fact that you're actually able to keep up with Schumacher, and don't forget, it's in your third season in F1, you're able to keep up with one of the greats of the sport, and you're able to constantly be up there. And only lose by only a couple of points, I think that's just definitely a big showing that you are a future world champion. You have something to prove at this level.
Yeah, well, it didn't happen for him in 2003. It didn't quite happen for him in 2005 either, when maybe it should have. But 2006, bad year. McLaren, their struggle. Kimi finishes 5th, which I mean, relatively is okay. But in the last 2 years, he's finished third twice. Sorry, in the last 3 years, he's finished second twice. And then he changes to Ferrari, the biggest racing team in the world. I mean, of course, we know what happens there, but do you think things would have been different if 2006 had gone well for McLaren? Would he have stayed there and eventually won the title? Because, 2007 was obviously going to be a massive opportunity for him. How would you see Kimi's career going if he didn't make that move in 2007? Saif?
I could definitely see him winning a world championship at some point if he did stay with McLaren. But obviously McLaren's car was far too unreliable for him, and that's why he switched to Ferrari. But I don't think his legacy would be as big, because I think him bringing the championship home for Ferrari and being the last person to do so really cements his legacy in the sport.
Yeah, and then of course, we've got to talk about the Ferrari era of his existence. There's two of them, but we'll start with the first one. And 2007 season. It's probably, I think 2007, is it overshadowed by 2008, or is it just as good? Because, that's the start of Lewis Hamilton's career. That's when a lot of us, I think, that's just, at least if you're watching through your parents, that's kind of first memory time. But that was a year when he won, but maybe he shouldn't have, right?
2007, yeah, you can't say he didn't deserve to win. He put in the performances, especially at the end of the season, that won him the title. But I know what you mean, like, it's sort of overshadowed. I always felt 06 to 07 was such a jump in terms of eras, especially because it was very neatly coincided with the greatest driver of the early 2000s retiring, and then the greatest driver of probably the 2010s and maybe all time joining the sport. It's such a like jump between the two. I think Kimi Raikkonen's always maybe all sort of had the issue of when he didn't perform in the early stages of his career, there were always drivers that seemed to overshadow him. We had Alonso 5-6, Hamilton maybe 7, 8, maybe 9, Vettel then going on and then back to Hamilton. It just never really sort of happened for Raikkonen, but I'm sort of fine with it happening for him in 2007. Like, granted, it was lucky, but to be honest, for a driver of his caliber, he probably did deserve a world championship and didn't maybe get one in 03 or 05 when he deserved it a bit more.
Yeah, we talk about 2008 as well. It's one where he starts to suddenly be overshadowed not only by Lewis Hamilton, but Felipe Massa, who's fighting for the title, and Kimi's not there. He's 12 points behind in the end, I think. It might have been 13, I can't remember the exact numbers, but he's there and thereabouts, but he's not quite title ready. He's going to take a year. He's going to take 2 years off in a couple years' time, but is that the start of the Kimi downfall, or is it just like a little blip in his run?
Probably say both. I mean, at the end of the day, this is Kimi Raikkonen. He's got his championship. He's got the one thing like he was working for, ultimately in F1. So probably at that time he was slacking a little bit that year as well. And then another thing to add, that probably I think that was when the first time when Ferrari kind of probably started moving away from Kimi Raikkonen for some reason. Because I mean, 2009 he was completely overshadowed. Ferrari didn't make a good car, and then he was dumped at the end of the season anyway for Fernando Alonso. And then, but maybe it was a slight blip in his career because at the end of the day he wasn't competitive enough in 08 or 09, and he didn't have competitive car for the next few years to come as well.
Yeah, and we've seen in his attitude recently as well. But you got something to say, Will? No, okay. That he's it's all about what he wants and where his head is at. I think maybe in 2007 he's got that world title, and I think he says later that he wanted that and that's all he wanted from it. Is him 2008, 2009? Is that a signal of him slowing down, or do you think he's had the drive throughout his career, James?
I'd say the same. It's just the idea of him achieving what he was ultimately aiming for, and then after doing that, I mean, we all know Kimi's character. He kind of he's not really fazed by anything. I'm assuming that's when it kind of kicked in, and he just didn't really care much about anything further, or it is what it is kind of like mindset just kicking in. I just assume. So yeah.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about some of the memes that come out of Kimi as well, because we could spend an hour on that. But before we do, we're going to take a break. So this is Brave by Ella Henderson. Make sure you stick around for part 2 of the career of Kimi Raikkonen. That was Brave by Ella Henderson, and we're back with the Warwick F1 Show, talking about the career of Kimi Raikkonen. We've gone over the first half of his career. We're going to take a little break. We're going to go over some of the more amusing parts, I think, because he's a character that's known for being somewhat unintentionally amusing. His nickname's the Iceman, but oh my god, watching him is absolutely brilliant, isn't it?
I mean, I think it's clear that he's just there for the racing. He doesn't care about the whole media like circus, and I think he's probably got more fed up with it, especially now Liberty have come in and decided to make all the drivers do things outside of like normal journalism, like making them play like Grill the Grid and stuff. But he's there for the racing, and I think he doesn't really care about the other stuff, and it's just that presents some funny moments for us.
What made you interested in him particularly, Chinmay? How much of it is driving and how much of that is personality?
I think, to be fair, it's mostly personality that's just with Kimi. It's just, I just love the fact he just doesn't care. He's just there to race, nothing else. And just the way he just shoves off the PRs all the time, and he would just make any excuse just to go away and get in his yacht like he did in 2006 when when his engine blew up when he was dominating that race. I mean, or he would just do whatever he wants. He's not bound. He doesn't bound himself to any PR or media. It's Kimi Raikkonen. It's him in the flesh. It's him in real life. There's no facade he puts up. That's what I really like about Kimi Raikkonen. That's why he's my favourite driver.
James, are we going to see someone kind of starting to fill in that shoes that we've had before? Is our new media personality Daniel Ricciardo? Is he just like irreplaceable? Do you reckon there's someone to replace him next year?
I mean, we're talking about Kimi Raikkonen. I don't think there's anyone that's going to be possibly replacing him. Verstappen comes close, but in a sense, Verstappen's a bit more fiery than the Iceman himself.
So we've got the fireman and the Iceman, haven't we?
Yeah, literally, kind of both not really happy with the PR scheme, but it's still different in a sense, completely different character. Yeah, don't really see anyone replacing him in the near future.
And while we're on that kind of vein of thinking, what do you think of the kind of general PR atmosphere surrounding the drivers? Is it great for us? We get to see more of them. We get to see that. I don't know if you saw the Grill the Grid episode where Vettel just named every single F1 title, but does that bring more personality to it, or is it just gonna make them a little bit more grumpy?
No, I think it definitely allows them to build their own personality in the sport. It allows fans to really connect with their drivers on a different level. It's just interesting to get insights. It's turned into sort of a reality TV show as well as a sport. And that catches like lots of people's imaginations.
Yeah, and I think Kimi's like the accidental. He's wandered into the middle of this reality TV show and he hates it with a passion, but he's there for the racing anyway. What's your favourite? Come on, we've got so many Kimi memes. What's your favourite Kimi meme?
I think it is from that Grill the Grid episode where he names them all up to himself in 2007. And then when he didn't realise he has to go further. And then when he gets told he could have just got one wrong from the start, he instantly just names 06 wrong just so he can go home. I mean, that's the attitude I like to see.
You got a better one, Chinmay?
I got multiple, to be fair. I mean, first one, red flags in the middle of the Sepang race. He's eating ice cream, a chocolate Magnum. It's just classic Kimi. Another one is when what was it? I think 2006, where he missed the award ceremony when I can't remember. Someone was handing some award to Michael Schumacher. I think it was Pele. I can't remember. And then I can't say this now, but he was doing. He wasn't there for a specific reason.
Dumb.
Yeah, he was doing some business, but then, yeah. And I think my third one is just the amount of arguing he does with his radio engineer while racing 180 miles an hour about his drink bottle. No, Kimi, you will not have to drink it. That's the way he can just casually argue with the engineer about something like that while racing in the middle of stressful scenarios is just that's just brilliant.
Any I've missed, Saif? I think
definitely. I've got three that are really good stories. The first is that before he made his debut for Ferrari in 07, he actually entered a snowmobile race in Finland, and he raced under the pseudonym James Hunt. And for those who don't know, he was the 76 Drivers' Championship. He was a prevalent playboy and a great racer, and he goes by him. And then soon after that, he actually joined with his friends to enter a Swedish powerboat race, and they all dressed as gorillas, and they won best dressed team.
Cool. Those are some of the ones that don't hit the limelight. How about in the last couple of years? What about you, James? You picked up any particular moments?
Actually, my favourite one is from a clip that I watched regarding Kimi Raikkonen. It was, I think, in Monaco, one of his old races, 2006, I think it was, when he crashed into the walls, and then instead of going back to the pit lane, he just straight up goes up onto his yacht and just starts partying with his friends, just sitting there sipping on champagne in his tub, just not really caring about what's happening down there. And I can't remember I can't remember the year, but it was one of those years where he was in the pit lane and the engineer was pushing him out onto the grids, I think it was, and then he was asking for his steering wheel and no one would give it to him. He started shouting in the microphone and saying in his voice, steering wheel, something like that. Yeah. One of the phasing moments where he gets angry at his engineers, I'm assuming, yeah, so.
Yeah, and I quite like the story where he was asleep half an hour before his first race. Yeah. But there's so many. I think we could go on for another 10 minutes. We won't. We'll come back to what he's doing in that 2 years break, because I think for a lot of people, how many drivers have we seen come back from 2 year breaks? 1 year's. I mean, Prost came back. 2 years. Alonso, yeah. I mean, Alonso's had a very big break, but there aren't many, right?
Schumacher, didn't he come back?
Yeah. How many drivers have we come back and been potential world championship caliber? None of them, I don't think, except for Kimi.
Hell plan 2022.
All right, we'll talk about Alonso in 3 years' time, see if that is the case. But what's he doing in that break to keep himself motivated? Why has he come back? What's he doing in that time, Saif? I know you know a little bit.
This is one of my favourite periods of time for Kimi, and he entered the World Rally Championship in 2010, and he was driving the Red Bull-sponsored Citroen C4 rally car, and he's only the second driver in history to have scored points in both Formula One and the World Rally Championship, and he actually finished as the best rookie that season. And then soon after that, he set up his own team, Ice1 Racing, and entered the next season under his own team, and he then entered the motocross world as well under Ice1 Racing. And then soon after that, he went into NASCAR, and he was racing in the truck series as well. And for me, like, this is the period of time that really proves that Kimi is a cut above the rest. I think it's like with performers, they can win Emmys, Grammys, Tonys, and that really proves that they have diversity in their skills. I think if he's done all these different racing series, it cements his how good he is at driving that extends beyond any specific discipline.
I think you can draw parallels to Fernando Alonso in that way as well. That 2-year break after, I think leaving McLaren, they've both been McLaren drivers. They've both been Ferrari drivers. They've got a lot of parallels in that as well. But what do you think? Fernando is motivated in the same way that Kimi was in 2000. I mean, we'll talk about it in a second after the break. But do you think that 2-year break has been there because he wants to be there, or because, like Fernando, he wants to go and do something else?
I think, to be fair, Alonso and Kimi were actually quite similar in that respect. I think Kimi wanted to go out and just do something else for a bit. Alonso also wanted to go out and do something else, and then obviously they were hungry to come back into the sport, because otherwise they wouldn't come back to F1. But I think the only difference is personality. Alonso's a lot more vocal about his enthusiasm. Kimi won't be, because it's Kimi.
Yeah, that is true. It is Kimi. We'll be talking a little bit more about the more serious stuff. The end of his career, the last how long's it been now? I guess 9 years, isn't it? It feels like it's just been a couple, but yeah, nine more years of Kimi's career after that World Championship. We'll be talking about that after this song, which is Instigator by Twin Atlantic. And we're back with the Warwick F1 Show, the third section of our show on Kimi Raikkonen, and we're gonna have to keep cruising on, because there's so much to talk about in so little time, and I want to get a little prediction game going from our two guests as well at the end of the show. But before we talk about that, we've got to talk about 9 years, which is long enough to be any driver's career, right? But it's the second half of his career. He's come back and he goes straight into Lotus. And there's some rumours about him joining Renault, which became Lotus later. But he comes in there and he spends 2 years, and he outperforms that car so much. I mean, I don't think we give enough credit to how good that Lotus was and how good Kimi was straight after he comes back, right?
Well, I mean, that Lotus it was never like a top. So 2012, it's sort of Ferrari, McLaren, or McLaren and Red Bull, with Ferrari being dragged into a title fight by Fernando Alonso. 2013 is very much Red Bull, Mercedes maybe challenging a bit up until the second after the season, where Sebastian Vettel decides to become the best racer of all time. But Lotus were always like sort of upper midfield, and he got 2 wins in that period and like 8 or so more podiums. He really outperformed that car, finishing, was it third in 2012?
Yeah, third and fifth in succession.
But I mean, we even say he finishes fifth. He misses the final 2 races, and at the final race that he took part in 2013, he was also third. Like, he outperformed that car by just so much higher than what you would expect from what was realistically like an upper midfield car.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of equivalent to the McLaren and the Ferrari that we've got now.
Yeah.
So what would you say to... I mean, none of them have done it. Ricciardo's won 1 race, right? I mean, who else has won races for them this year?
Ricciardo was the only one.
He was the only one. So, I mean, he's done that 2 years in a row, right? How would you see... I mean, he's almost there now. There's almost... it's like Vettel doing it last year. Is it? How he's so many years into his career? Is that not like mind-boggling? Like, Saif and James, what do you think to that? Is that it's not better than his world championship, but is that like proving just how good he is, like straight off the bat?
Yeah, definitely. I would agree that it does prove how good he is, because he really did bring that car that wasn't very competitive at all, and that the lack of competitiveness of that car was shown in the whole contract disagreement, etc., and that's where that all stemmed from. I think it really does prove that he's a good driver. What about you, James?
Yeah, I mean, coming back from a break like that and then just coming straight back in, winning the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix, and just having wins like that on a so-called like McLaren, Ferrari kind of level car would be proving that he's good enough as a driver, and he is ready for it.
Yeah, and then he steps from there and he comes back to Ferrari. Now he spent three years at Ferrari in the first half of his career. I cannot remember. I'll get it right. And now he comes 2014 to 2018. That's another 5 years at Ferrari. Is there something about that team, about the prestige there, that's dragging him back in, or is it just that they're able to provide a race-winning car so often, Chinmay?
I think it was more the second race-winning car. I mean, it's not just... I don't think Kimi would care about the prestige of the car very much. I think it just, his history with Ferrari, the fact that he's won a world champion, and that Ferrari has a reputation that occasionally that they can bring out a race-winning car. So I think that's what really drew Kimi back into the sport, back into that team, really.
And how much do you think, I know he says it's just about racing, but how much do you think the chance for him to get into the same car as Fernando Alonso and go head-to-head with him, how much do you think that had an effect on it as well?
I think that would have quite an effect. I mean, at the end of the day, he had the opportunity to go against the top of the field, because Fernando Alonso was, even though Fernando Alonso's been in the sport for the same amount of time as Kimi Raikkonen, in fact a bit longer, because Kimi did have the hiatus. But I think it's just the opportunity. He can go head to head with a top racer and just go for it for one last time, really.
Yeah, well, he finishes third in 2012. I mean, from there is regular top four positions, and he's back in 2018 and he's back in third again. But is there a time, do you think that's slipping off? I mean, there's a little bit of a dip, but how do you feel like outside the results, like just general feeling, Saif? Where do you reckon he's slowly going downhill there, or if he is constant throughout?
Well, like we said earlier in the podcast, he did finish his last season in third. But I don't really think this is an accurate reflection of Kimi's driving ability, because he's one of those guys who really, he turns in late and he really throws it into the corner as late as possible. And the lack of front aero that this generation of cars had from 2014, it really it caused him to struggle. And I don't think that's his fault. He was just on the unlucky side of where specifications go.
Yeah, and in 2018 he wins the US Grand Prix. Do you think that's extra motivation for him as well? We talked about him staying with or moving to Sauber because of that connection that he has. But James, do you reckon that win as well keeps him in the sport?
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to sports, I'm assuming these kind of wins always generate a special feeling for them, and even for a man like Kimi, it gives him an electric feeling that he probably gets motivated from. But then again, it's also Kimi, so we'll never know what he's thinking about in his head. But yeah, I genuinely think that was when he just decided to stay in a bit more in the sport, even though he's getting old and getting tired. Yeah.
Where's the... Yeah, go for it, Saif, sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that with that USA win, he ended up having a gap of over 5,000 days between his first and last win. And in 2018, he was rapid still, because in Monza he set the fastest lap of all time, averaging a speed of 163 miles per hour at the Cathedral of Speed. So it proves how much pace he had still to that point.
Yeah, and he picks up a couple of seconds in about 7 or 8 podiums, so he's still right up there. Where do you reckon the highlight of that five-year spree is, when he's at Lotus and Ferrari, Will?
I'd say probably his win at Ferrari in the USA, because he came quite close at the Italian race that you mentioned there. I think Hamilton overtook him with about 10, 15 laps to go, but it almost felt like he was sort of ending it on a high note, and especially after it had been, I think, 113 races between Australia 2013 and US 2018. I think Crofty famously said 113 years, which is what it must have felt like to him. But I think going out on a high note is probably what he wanted to do. And I mean, it almost maybe wasn't the highest of notes. I know he came fourth at the crazy Brazilian race in 2019, but I think it's got to be the USA. Just like getting that win after so long and ending it like on a good note at what hadn't been the most successful time at Ferrari.
You agree with that, Chinmay, or you got something else?
No, I think I completely agree. I mean, there's nothing better than going out on high, but I'll probably just give an honourable mention to the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix back in 2012. I mean, he just wanted to be left alone that race, so...
Oh, always with the memes. I've got to bring in as well the kind of semi-famous story where Lotus paid him by the point that he scored, right? And he almost bankrupted the team when he came back in 2012, scoring 207 points and then 183 for what's that? 390 points total. Yeah, Saif.
From what I know, it was $50,000 per point. That
Wow, that's a lot of money they gave him.
That adds up to 20 million if you add up the 2 years' points.
I love that.
Yeah, so I mean, we knew he was racing for fun anyway, but at least he's got another yacht to go to next time he crashes out of Monaco, right?
I think I want to say he might have voided that, because I don't think they expected to have such a good car, and then Kimi's outperforming what is already quite a good car, and that was a very expensive mistake that they made.
Yeah, go Safe.
Like you were talking about the yacht, he did have his own yacht moment during this time, because during the middle of the season, during the break, he took a 16-day binge drinking competition with his friends and ended up spraining his ankle because he thought he was Diego Maradona.
Absolute legend.
Of course he did. All right. I don't want to end on that note, but I mean, what note do we end on? We've got the Sauber story. We've got 3 years. Is there someone continuing his legacy in Valtteri Bottas? Is he going to be the new Iceman, or is it just someone irreplaceable?
I think he is. He is quite unique. I don't think you're going to get another Kimi Raikkonen, especially with just how the times have changed, and now you have to be sort of social media like savvy to sort of get along with F1. Kimi was in the sport before that, so he didn't need to in a way, but if you're coming in afterwards, I think it's a lot more of a concern.
Yeah, I mean, we saw the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. We saw the fact that he came out, he got driver of the day. That was a really nice moment, wasn't it, James?
Yeah, it was a shame that he crashed out, but he couldn't finish the race, his one final Grand Prix. But yeah, it was good to see that at least the fans cheered him on wherever he's going. Hopefully not another yacht, but yeah, all good vibes.
All right, we're going to end at that little bit there. We're going to come back and we're going to do some predictions. But before we do, this is Complicated by Red. And welcome back to the Warwick F1 Show. We're changing things up a little bit for this term. We're going to throw in a little final segment as well, where I ask the two guests that we try and get on every week, or if there's not there, we'll get some of the regular hosts on as well. But we're going to go over some predictions, and at the end of the season, hopefully someone, it won't be me because I won't be here, but someone will go over, we'll have a look, and we'll see who did the best. So stakes are high for you guys. We've got, just a reminder for you, we've got Saif and James to go through it, and we'll start with the really basic ones. I want starting with Saif, just World Drivers' Champion and then World Constructors' Champion for next year.
Yeah, I think the World Drivers' Championship will go to Lewis Hamilton. I think the World Constructors' Championship will also go to Mercedes. I think the W13 looks hot this year.
Okay, what about you?
I'm gonna put a bit of spice into this one. I think George Russell has it got coming for him, and the constructor has to be Mercedes. As Saif mentioned, W13 looks quite decent. So.
Okay, what do you guys think about that? viable?
I feel like Mercedes is quite a strong shout, especially with the strength. They probably got the strongest overall drivers lineup. Maybe Ferrari have the most guaranteed strong lineup, but on paper you'd think Mercedes. And then obviously if you've got a Constructors' Championship, you'd think, especially with the strength of the two drivers, they'll both be up there.
Okay, right. Who's going to win the most driver of the day? Again, Saif.
I think most drivers of the day will probably go to George Russell. I think he'll put in quite a few performances to outdo Lewis, and that will impress people.
How about you, James?
I think Verstappen, because he's done an exceptional season last year, like the previous season, and then this season I think he's going to keep it going regardless of how many Grand Prix he wins. So if the form continues, then yeah.
Okay, we're going to do a quick fire round. I'm going to give you a team, and you're going to say which driver is going to get the most qualifying wins over their teammates. So we'll go right from the top. I'll start with you again, Saif. You ready?
Yep.
Nice and quick.
Okay.
All right. Merc.
Hamilton.
Okay. Red Bull.
Verstappen.
Ferrari.
I think Sainz.
McLaren.
I think Daniel Ricciardo is going to make a big move this year.
Okay. Alpine.
Fernando.
Cool. AlphaTauri.
Oh, Pierre Gasly.
Yeah, that's
But
an easy one, isn't
Yuki's
it?
my guy.
Aston Martin.
Probably not Lawrence Stroll. Lawrence Stroll.
Lawrence Stroll. Okay.
Sorry.
Williams.
Williams. Alex Albon.
Lovely. Alfa Romeo.
Bottas.
And Haas.
Schumacher again.
Got to be Schumacher. Okay, James, same again. You ready?
Yep.
Right, Mercedes.
Hamilton.
Red Bull.
Verstappen.
Ferrari.
Leclerc.
Ooh, got a difference. McLaren.
Norris.
Good. I'm surprised by your Ricardo one. Alpine.
Alonso.
AlphaTauri.
Gasly.
Yeah. Aston Martin.
Vettel.
Good. I'd rather that one. Williams.
Albon. I guess, yeah.
Alfa Romeo.
Bottas.
Bottas and Haas.
Schumacher.
Lovely. And the last predictions we're going to do, because we're going to run out of time, I'm going to ask you one race and one team. And it can't be one of the top 4 teams from last year. So no Mercedes, no Red Bull, no Ferrari, no McLaren. And you'll score the amount of points that team scores at that race. So, I mean, who would be the best this season? Probably Alpine at Hungary?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So, one race, one team. What do you reckon, Saif?
Maybe AlphaTauri at Monza. I mean, they did quite well this previous year, and I have lots of faith in the AlphaTauri team.
Okay, James, what do you reckon? Tricky question, I know.
Yeah. I'd say Aston Martin. I don't know. I can't tell. Silverstone, 8 points, hopefully.
Oh, you don't have to
You don't,
guess
yeah,
the
that's
point.
right.
Yeah.
That would be harsh.
Yeah.
Okay, how about you two guys? Anything that stood out there for you? Any awful predictions you want to insult? Don't insult, I guess, please. But
No, I think got to back Mazepin for the Haas qualifying battle. Yeah, but I mean, there's nothing awful there. Like, if it's all up in the air at the moment, AlphaTauri could be on a just best team on the grid, 1-2 victory at Monza.
okay, anything else to add, Chinmay?
No, same with Mazepin, but maybe not turn.
Oh, don't. Let's not even start, please.
No, not turn 3 at Bahrain. He'll just go straight off the pit straight and bang into a wall.
It just turns left right off the start line. Okay. All right. Well, we'll see if that's the case. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much, James. And thank you, Saif, as well, for coming in. We'll see at the end of the season how you did. That's a very long payoff. As well, thanks to you guys, to Chinmay and to Will for coming on.
That's all right.
Thank you.
Good, and we'll see you next week at the same time. So remember, we're live Wednesday 1 till 2, or you can follow on the Raw Sport Spotify or on the YouTube page. For now, I cannot remember what's coming up next, so enjoy the music.